Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tudor. As Daniela said, I'm a consultant. As a background, I spent over 15 years in marketing roles in corporation. Namely, last 6 years, I've been consumer marketing director in Microsoft. Before that, I was responsible for launching some products like Windows Vista, for which I was loved or not. Windows 7, for which I was okay, really loved. Internet Explorer, for which, let's not comment. But the idea is that part of all these roles, I learned to work with small companies, mid companies, big companies, enterprises, public sector, both large and small entities in public sector, and of course, into the end, with consumer. With a lot of experience in what digital transformation really means. GDPR will affect everyone. I know that there are many articles that GDPR affects only organizations above 200 employees or companies having more than 200 personal data. No, it will affect everyone. Every company will be directly affected by it. And not only through the legal perspective, but from a mindset perspective, from a digital transformation mindset perspective. Let me explain. First of all, let me tell you how GDPR started. Often you go to a lot of conferences where people talk about GDPR, and the main two things about it, two things are two. Shortly, first of all, the fines, which are huge, up to 20 million euro or 4% of the annual turnover, whichever is higher. And second of all, you cannot do anything with personal data. Now, of course, these are, let's say, the most viral things about this new law coming into effect on May 25th, 2019. But this is a good thing. I know many of you think, oh God, what will we do starting May 25th? Or what will we do starting tomorrow? Because we need to get prepared, all of us. So, how did this law appear? So first of all, there was a German MP from the Green Party who one day realized, wait a minute, I want to have control on my personal data. I got tired of how Google, Facebook, Amazon, and many other big data companies are using my own data. The one having data has the power. And moreover, it has the power to influence. We all seen what in the last years, what handling huge process of personal data can do to communities, how you can influence communities. These days, there are companies, I won't mention necessarily the names, but you've seen the effects, which basically can turn people into a certain direction, can radicalize them, can give them political opinions that they didn't used to have, simply by using data. They study each data point, for example, how often, you check into a certain location. What purchases do you do online? How many times you stay in traffic? Your GPS location. Who do you meet? With whom do you spend time? Who is your family? Who is your entourage? Everything. There are companies gathering up to 4,000 to 5,000 data points per person. And they are putting a special dedicated profile on you using psychometric techniques, and once they put you in certain profiles, they can identify people who are much easier to influence, and they influence them into a certain direction. Whether commercial, which is a dream for any of us, of course, we want to know as marketers which is our sales target, who is our target. But from political perspective, this is super dangerous. And we'll say, yeah, but they cannot influence me, I'm smart. I read a lot of books. I spent a lot of time on the internet. Yeah, but my neighbor did not. My neighbors did not. My community did not. And if my community goes to a radical point of view, I am screwed as well. Because I live in this neighborhood. I live in this city. I live in this country. So that's why GDPR is so important. With the appearance of AI and machine learning systems that influence people, their main food is personal data. Once you stop feeding personal data to these algorithms won't be able to influence anymore. And this is the main logic behind GDPR. We need to put people in control. Each of us in this room, behind our jobs, our daily duties, our business targets, our sales targets, we are citizens, we are humans, and we need our rights. It's simply all about our rights to hold on to our personal data, which is our personal good. It's just like our money, it's just like our cars, it's just like our assets. It's our assets. So, what changes do GDPR bring? First of all, it's a mentality change. It's how you consider personal data. Starting May 25th, none of us will have databases of personal data. Our database. It's not our database. We will simply be curators of citizens, of EU citizens' assets. These EU citizens will be able to remove the data from us anytime they want. It's covered in something called the right to access their personal data. They can go to any company or organization holding personal data saying, hello, my name is this. I want to know what data do you store about me. And you are mandated to give them all the data you hold about them, including browsing history, IPs, whatever you stored about them, and whatever results you have about them after processing their data. Second of all, they have the right to correct errors in their personal data. They have the right to object to process of personal data. And of course, it's the right to erasure. They have the right to ask you to remove their personal data. That's why all of us, from May 25th, we are curators. We cannot hold to that data. It's not our data. It's their data that we are holding for them. Also, in terms of mentality, this law brings the following thing. Mostly, all the citizens have only rights, and mostly all the organizations have only duties. As part of the organization's duties, organizations are required to provide clear notification of data collection. Simply, you cannot collect every data you want from anyone. You cannot do this anymore. I mean, you need to collect only the data you need for a specific purpose, which needs to be really, really clearly defined. For example, if you want to send a newsletter, you only need the email address. You don't need the color of the hair, you don't need the color of the eyes, you don't need the height, you don't need the weight. No, just the email address. Moreover, you need to define data retention and deletion policies. You cannot hold the data more than is needed for the processing scope of data. Meaning, if you have, for example, a special campaign for an event to ask for personal data to be processed at an event, after the event, you are required to delete that data. You don't need it anymore, unless you have a specific purpose. That, again, needs to be mentioned. Mostly, all the data that you already have, and this is the most difficult thing for the companies, each company needs to check what acknowledgements or OKs do they have for the processing of the data they already have. Because after May 25th, you cannot ask your personal data owners about consent, because you won't be able to ask them anymore if you don't have consent to contact them. So you need to check for consent till May 25th for all the data you have. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't. The law clearly gives each company, let's say, I wouldn't say a backdoor, but not an escape path, but a legitimate interest. If you have a legitimate interest in processing that data, then you are covered. Let's say for the good of that person, or for legal purposes, for example. I mean, everything which is covered by legal purposes has legitimate interest. You don't need consent for it. But for example, if you have data used for a newsletter campaign, if you're trying to create some special sales offer based on the behavior of that person that you have in the newsletter database, you kind of need consent for that. Moreover, as organizations, and this is about digital transformation, you need to secure the data. You need to encrypt the data. You need, as much as possible, you need to secure against leakage of personal data. I think a few weeks ago, Hilton had a huge case of leaking personal data to the public, and they got fined. The fine wasn't that big. Under the GDPR specifications, the fine would have been in the range of $800 million. Okay, 4% of annual turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. So that's why it's super important to secure the data against leakage. If you detect a leakage, then you must notify the data protection authority in that country in EU in 72 hours from the discovery, not from the happening, because you might detect it, let's say, later. But in 72 hours from detection, you need to notify the authorities about the event. Also, you need to be super transparent for the authorities. If they come to check you, you need to show them what types of policies do you have in place for protecting personal data, what transactions do you have, and you need to be able to give them the audits of the data. Basically, a list of all public of all personal data transactions. You need to be able to present the logs, because these are assets that you hold for European citizens, meaning that you need to present to the Data Protection Authority a list of all the transactions and processing you are doing with their data. So this, of course, means digital systems as much as possible. Now, you can compare this to the year 2000 bug, if you remember. In the 90s, the computer data used to be held only in two numbers. I mean, the year of the data, like 92, 93, 94. And the question was, what would happen from migrating from 99 to 2000? And they realized that many of the computers would interpret the data as 1900. Of course, oh my God, what will happen? Rockets will be launched, the end of the world, the banks will fall, planes will fall. Of course, in this period, lots of IT engineers made a lot of money simply repairing the systems. But of course, after January 1st, poof, gone away. Well, GDPR, it's similar but not identical, because the GDPR requirements don't go away. So after May 25th, the GDPR requirements will be in place. We are now heading into a panic zone, because the GDPR alignment process takes a lot of time. Not necessarily a lot of time if you have a small company, but if you have a big company with lots of data, with tens of years of operating, yes, then it takes really a lot of time. And I'll show you why. So, what do you need to prepare for the GDPR compliance? First of all, you must know where the data resides in your company. You'll be surprised in how many locations you can find personal data that you forgot about. Let me give you an example. Memory sticks. Memory sticks are, let's say, the biggest rat in the company, because you don't know where they are. They are really small. They are really big in size of data they can store. And you forget lists, documents, database exports, all on memory sticks. A lot of data has been lost on memory sticks, and then it got public, which was a severe breach of personal data intimacy. Second of all, in emails. You've been to an event and you received a list of all the participants there. And the authority comes, sorry, do you have consent from these guys to hold their emails and personal data? I say, yeah, but I received it. Yeah, but do you have consent? No. Then why didn't you delete it? You are storing an asset of an European citizen. Backups. You delete the data from your laptop and you forget about the backups. And they are there. Then you need to control who has access to the data. It's not anymore everyone accesses whatever they want. You need to establish clear path who accesses what. It's just like in your company. You don't let anyone enter every room of the company. You're not allowing everyone to access any place in the company. It's the same with personal data. You cannot allow for everyone to access whatever personal data they want. No, it needs to be established clear roles with clear access paths. You need to classify, protect, and policy drive actions on the devices. You need to have policies. How do you detect a data or identity breach? What procedures do you have in place to respond to the breach? And how can you continuously review and update the data protection policies? Now, how does a GDPR alignment process look like? This is a methodology, a 4-step methodology. It's not the only one in the market. There are several. But this has 4 steps. And I'll explain why it takes some time. The first one is the discovery. In this phase, and also in the second phase, which is the govern, or the management, basically you identify where the data resides and who accesses it. You identify all the data paths in the company. Where data enters, what happens to it, what processing takes place, and where does it exit. Does it exit through another company, to another country, or is it destroyed? You need a full X-ray of your company from a data perspective. What better example of a digital transformation project? You will understand how your company works from data perspective once you do this. You see who handles data, and I guarantee you have a lot of surprises in these steps. In all the projects I've been involved, these 2 steps produce surprises. Usually in audit produces surprises. When we were in Microsoft, we ran, for example, once a software asset management to a really big company. And the IT wanted to know which was the most used application in the company. What do you think it was? Heroes of Might and Magic. Heroes of Might and Magic, the game. Yes? Basically, they were, instead of working, they were playing a lot. The IT didn't even know they had the game in the company. It's the same here. When you're showing them, look, you have data 5 years old on these servers, which is fully exposed and public. Moreover, there is a web server exposing the data. I was like, oh my God, really? I mean, it's really scary how bad people treat personal data. Step 3 means actually starting to protect, developing the procedures and processes for protecting the personal data. Security, encryption, anonymization of data. If, for example, if you have data relevant for a specific geographic location, you don't need all the names. So you transform the names and you anonymize them. Okay, between, you say instead of Aaron Sheffield, you say AASS. Okay, and that's it. It's okay. Anonymization of data. You only need, let's say, different other data which cannot identify a person uniquely. In fact, this is the definition of personal data. Something that anything capable of identifying you as a single person. It's not anymore just name, your ID, or your photo. No, it's much more. And step 4, creating the reporting infrastructure. Meaning, understanding how you need to be transparent for the authorities when they come in control. What procedures do you have in place? What audits do you have? Logs, detailed logs of every operation. Authorities are very interested in knowing how you treat personal data as a culture in the company. These 4 steps basically are a full alignment to GDPR. These first 2 steps can take, if you are, let's say, a medium insurance company, between 2, 3, 4 months. But these 2 steps, the IT implementation, once you have CRM and ERP and data flows they already established in CRMs and ERPs, they can take up to 1 year, which take you way after May 25th. But at least you need to show the authorities that you already started, that you have a culture inside the company related to protecting personal data. Thank you very much.